70% of lottery winners are completely broke within 5 years. Not a little broke, not back to normal broke. We're talking debt, bankruptcy, destroyed, relationships worse than before day one. Now, most people hear that and say, well, they just spent it all. They were irresponsible. That's what I thought so. But then I looked at the NFL. 78% of NFL players face serious financial stress within 2 years of retiring. These are men who earned tens of millions of dollars over their careers. 60% of NBA players go bankrupt within 5 years of leaving the league. So I need you to sit with that for a second. Because if this were about income, if the solution to being broke was just earning more money, then a $10 million paycheck would fix it. And it doesn't. Which means the problem is not the money. The problem is something happening inside the mind. Something so deep and so automatic that most people go their entire lives without ever seeing it. And today, in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show it to you completely. But I need you to stay with me until the end. Because the most important thing I'm going to tell you is not at the beginning, it's not in the middle. The piece that will actually change how you behave with money, the practical part, comes last. So stay. Let's get into it. Here's the first thing you need to understand. And this one genuinely changed how I see people who are struggling financially. In 2013, two economists, Sandil Mulantan from Harvard and Elder Shafir from Princeton, published research that should have been front page news everywhere. They ran experiments on farmers in rural India. They chose farmers especially because, or specifically because of something clever about their financial life. These farmers receive almost all of their annual income right after harvest. So the same person, same brain, same intelligence, same everything is relatively comfortable for a few months after harvest and then genuinely financially stressed for the months leading up the next one. So Mulanathan and Shafir tested the same farmers twice. Once when money wasn't a problem, once when it was, they ran cognitive tests, logic puzzles, IQ style questions, impulse control tasks. The same farmers scored the equivalent of 13 to 14 IQ points lower than they were financially stressed. 13 to 14 points. That is roughly the cognitive difference between someone who is sober and someone who has had several drinks, or between someone well rested and someone who hasn't slept in 24 hours. Now, here's why this matters so much. When you are stressed about money, when you are doing the mental arithmetic of can I afford this? What happens if the rent is late? How do I make this stretch to the end of the month? That thinking takes up space, real limited cognitive space. Psychologists call it working memory. And your brain only has so much of it. So the cure or the cruel irony, and this genuinely upsets me when I think about it, is that the people who must need to make careful, strategic, long-term financial decisions are the people with the least mental capacity available to make them. Not because they are less intelligent, but because their intelligence is already occupied, fully occupied by survival. Mullinathon calls this the tunneling effect. When financial stress hits, your brain tunnels. It pulls in what feels urgent, paying the electricity before they cut it off, buying food, getting through this week, and everything outside the tunnel goes dark. Savings, career development, long term planning, investing, all of it gone. Not because you stopped caring, because your brain literally cannot see outside the tunnel right now. And here is the part that makes the trap complete. The decisions you make while tunneling, because you can see the picture, often make the long-term situation worse. You take a payday loan because it's the only option visible inside the tunnel. The interest rate is 400%. You cover the rent, but now next month is worse. The tunnel gets narrower and the cycle tightens. This is not a moral failure. This is a documented cognitive phenomenon that happens to virtually every human being under sufficient financial pressure. The question is not why did they make that decision? The question is what does the tunnel look like from the inside? And how do you find the exit? We're going to answer that, but first I want to show you something even deeper. Because the bandwidth tax explains why people struggle to think clearly when they're broke, but it doesn't explain why people who escape poverty often fall back into it. For that, we need to talk about the financial thermostat. And I promise you, this next part is going to make you think about someone in your life very differently. You know how a thermostat works. You set a temperature, room gets too cold, heating kicks in, room gets too hot, it shuts off. Always returns to the set point, no matter what happens externally. Psychologists believe the human mind does the exact same thing with money. Not consciously, you're not sitting there thinking, I need to return to my financial baseline. It happens in the background through the decisions you make, the risks you don't take, the opportunities you don't notice, the ways you spend. Your behavior quietly steers you back towards what feels normal. The financial thermostat, and whatever level of wealth or struggle feels normal to you. That's where you keep ending up. This is why lottery winners go broke. This is why lottery winners go broke, not because they are stupid, because their financial thermostat is set as at a different temperature than the money they received. And so their behavior, spending, giving, investing badly, trusting the wrong people, gradually returns them to their set point. Now, where does the thermostat get set? This is where it gets personal. And I want you to think about your own life as I explain this. Financial psychologist Dr. Brad Klontz at Kansas State University has spent decades studying what he calls money scripts. Money scripts are the beliefs about money that you absorbed as a child between roughly the ages of 5 and 15 from the environment around you, not lessons you were taught, things you picked up. The tension in the house when bills arrived, the things your parents said under stress, whether money was discussed openly or treated like a shameful secret, whether wealth was something your family aspired or something they resented. Those absorbed beliefs become your financial thermostat, and they run silently in the background of every financial decision you make as an adult. The job you feel comfortable applying for, the salary you feel comfortable asking for, the amount in your account that, when you see it, feels dangerously high, so you find a reason to spend it. Klontz identified four main money scripts types. And I want you to identify yours because that's the first step to changing it. Money avoidance is the belief that money is bad, that wealthy people are corrupt or greedy or somehow lesser people. Those with this script often unconsciously self sabotage wealth because deep down, being wealthy would make them someone they don't want to be. Money worship is the belief that more money will fix everything, that happiness, security, peace, all of it, just one pay raise, rise away. These people work obsessively but are never satisfied because the next milestone never delivers the belief they expected. Money status is the belief that your net worth is your self worth. These people overspend to appear wealthier than they are. They are playing a performance and it's expensive. Money vigilance is the belief that you should always be anxious about money, that security is never real, that disaster is always around the corner. These people often hoard but can't enjoy anything they have. Every financial decision is paralyzing. I want you to leave a comment right now before you forget and tell me which one of those four sounds most like you. No judgment. I'll tell you mine at the end, but I want to see which scripts are most common in this community. So write it in the comments, just a name, money avoidance or money worship, maybe money status, money vigilance, something like that. So which one is running your financial life without your permission? Because here is the hard truth and the hopeful truth of the same at the same time. That script is not your fault. You absorbed it as a child. You had no say, but it is your responsibility to identify it now that you're an adult who can see it. And we are going to talk about it, about exactly how to rewrite it. Stay with me. Um, Let me ask you something. If I offered you a choice right now, $100 today or $120 in 1 month, which would you take? Most people take the 100 today, even though $120 in 30 days is a 20% return in a month. Annualized, that's over 240%. No investment on earth reliably delivers that. And yet, we still take the 100 now. This is called present bias, and it is one of the most powerful and well documented forces in all of behavioral economics. Richard Thaler at the University of Chicago won the Nobel Prize in economics in 2017, in part for his work on exactly this phenomenon. But here is what makes present bias really interesting. And this comes from neuroscience, not economics. Dr. Sam McClure at Princeton put people in a brain scanner and showed them these exact kinds of choices: immediate reward versus delayed reward. When people considered the immediate reward, the money now, the limbic system lit up. That's the emotional, impulsive, pleasure seeking part of the brain. When they considered the future reward, their prefrontal cortex activated, the rational planning long term part. And when both were active at the same time, when the emotional brain and the rational brain were both in the room, the emotional brain won almost every time. This is why you know you should save for retirement and you don't. Why you know the payday loan is a catastrophic decision and you take it anyway. Why you know you shouldn't blow the emergency fund on something you want and you do it and hate yourself afterwards. You're not weak. You're not undisciplined. You are a human being with a limbic system that evolved over hundreds of years to prioritize the immediate food, shelter, safety, now over any abstract future, etc. So the future wasn't guaranteed for most of human history. Your brain never got the memo that it is now. But here is the layer that really gets me. Psychologists Hal Hirschfield at UCLA ran a study where he showed participants digitally aged up photos of themselves, their own face transformed to show how they'd look at 70 years old. After seeing their older face, participants said they would allocate significantly more money to retirement saving than those who hadn't seen the photo. And when they put people in a brain scanner and asked them to think about their future self, their activity looked more like thinking about a stranger than thinking about themselves. You don't save for strangers, you save for people you know. Your future self, the 70-year-old who will need that money, feels like someone who have never met. And so, spending today rather than saving for them feels almost rational because to your brain, it kind of is. Now, stack all three of these things together, you're cognitively taxed by financial stress, so your rational brain is already weakened. Your financial thermostat is pulling you back toward your set point, and your future self feels like a stranger you owe nothing to. Of course, short term decisions dominate. The system is designed to produce exactly that outcome. But there is one more player, the deepest one, and this is the most people never want to talk about. Everything we've covered so far, the bandwidth task, the thermostat, present bias, these are things that happen to you. Mechanisms, systems. This next one is different because this one lives inside you, inside how you see yourself. In 1995, psychologist Claude Steele, Claude Steele at Stanford published research on something he called stereotype threat. What he found was that when people are reminded of a negative stereotype about a group they belong to, right before they do a task related to that stereotype, their performance drops. Measurably consistently, black students performed worse on academic tests when race was made salient before the test. Women performed worse on mathematics tests when told women tend to underperform in maths. Not because the stereotype was true, but because the awareness of it used cognitive resources, created anxiety, and began to feel like a self fulfilling prophecy. Now apply that to money. If you grow up in an environment where the message, spoken or unspoken, was that money is not for people like us, that is a stereotype, and it attached itself to your identity. And so every time you face a significant financial decision, something underneath the thinking whispers this isn't for you. You don't know how to handle this. Everyone in your family struggled with money and you will too. Yeah? And sometimes not because you're incapable, but because identity is the most powerful script any of us run. Sometimes you prove it right. Your brain is a confirmation machine. Psychologists call it confirmation bias, the tendency to notice, remember, and believe information that confirms what you already think is true about yourself and the world. If your identity says you are bad with money, your brain will highlight every financial mistake you make and quietly dismiss every success. You will remember the month you blew your savings perfectly. You will barely register the 3 months before it when you budgeted well. Because the failure fits the story. The success doesn't. And so the narrative per- perpetuates, not because it's accurate, because the brain is not searching for accuracy, it's searching for consistency. With that, it already believes. And then there is the structural reality underneath all of this. Because I don't want this video to be one of those videos that puts everything on the individual and ignores the world they are living in. Princeton sociologist Matthew Desmond, who won the Pulitzer's Prize for his book Evicted, documented something extraordinary. Being poor is expensive, not metaphorically, literally. Without a bank account, you pay 3 to 5% at a check cashing service. Without a credit history, you pay higher interest on everything. Without a car, transport costs more per mile. Without the ability to buy in bulk, food and household goods cost more per unit. Without a lease history, landlords charge you a premium. Poor neighborhoods have fewer grocery stores, so food is more expensive per calorie. The financial system charges the poor a premium for being poor. And when you are navigating all of that while cognitively tunneled with a thermostat set to scarcity, with a prison biased brain, with an identity that says wealth isn't for you, and someone tells you it's simply a matter of discipline and choices, that's not just unhelpful, that's dishonest. Understanding this isn't about removing your responsibility. It's about correctly identifying the obstacles so you can actually build a strategy to get past them. And that's what the last part of this video is. I told you at the beginning that the most important part comes last. We're here. I'm going to give you 3 things, specific things, not spend less than you earn, not have a positive mindset, things that are directly tied to the mechanisms we've built talking about, things with research behind them. Here's the first one. Schedule a weekly money date. Same day, same time, 30 minutes every week. I know that sounds simple. Here's why it works. The bandwidth task, the way financial stress drains your cognitive capacity, happens largely because money anxiety runs in the background consistently. You're not always thinking about it consciously, but it's there, using space. Research from the University of Scranton shows that scheduling a task reduces the ambient cognitive load of that task because the brain knows there is a container for it, a time when it will be handled. When you schedule your financial thinking, your brain stops running the background process all the day. You pull the stress out of the background and put it in a box. Tuesday at 7 p.m., that's when we look at money. Not all day, every day, without resolution. The tunnel narrows because of uncontrolled anxiety. Scheduling gives the tunnel a door. Here is the second one. Write a letter to your 70-year-old self. Not a plan, a letter. Personal, emotional. Describe where you live, what your days look like, what you've built, what you wish you'd started sooner. Make them real. Make your future self someone you know. Then you'll save for them. Hirschfield's research showed that people who did this exercise increased their retirement contributions by an average of 4.4% of income. That compounded over 30 years is the difference between comfort and crisis at 65. Now, brain saves for people it knows, right? Now, your future self is a stranger. This exercise makes them someone you've met, someone you feel responsible for. Write the letter this week, before next Sunday, seriously. And the third one, this is the one that works at the deepest level. Identify your money script, name it, then trace it. Go back to the four types: money avoidance, money worship, money status, money vigilance. You already know which one is yours. You knew when I described it. Now ask yourself, where did it come from? Not to blame anyone, just to locate it. What did you watch happen around money as a child? What was the atmosphere? What was the message? Write it down, one sentence, the belief you absorbed. Because here is what happens when a belief lives only in your head. It feels like truth, like reality, like just the way things are. But when you write it on paper, it becomes an object, something outside you that you can look at, examine, and decide whether you still want to carry it. Then write one sentence directly underneath it, a rewrite. If your script says money is not for people like me, the rewrite might be learning to manage money well is one of the most important things I can do for my future. If your script says I'll never be able to save, the rewrite is I am someone who is learning to build security slowly and deliberately. Read that rewrite every morning for 30 days. Not because it's magic, because repetition is how the brain builds new neural pathways. It's how advertisers embed beliefs in you without your permission. You can use the exact same mechanism on yourself deliberately in a direction you choose. Those three things this week. One, if that's all you can do, but start. Physical energy, warm, and all the vibrant feelings that you want to feel at that moment when you're reading those three things to make them stick on your head and in your subconscious mind. So here's where we've landed. Financial struggle is not a character flaw. It is a system. The bandwidth task taking up your cognitive space. The financial thermostat pulling you back to what feels similar. Present bias making your future self feel like a stronger and an identity narrative quietly confirming every fear you already had about yourself. That's the system, and now you can see it, and seeing it, naming it, is the beginning of being outside it. I said at the start, I tell you my money script. Mine is money vigilance, the belief that security is never real, that even when things are okay, something is about to go wrong. I still catch it running in the background. The difference now is I can see it. And when I can see it, it has less power. Which one is yours? I genuinely want to know. So drop it in the comments right now. Money avoidance, maybe money worship, money status, or money vigilance, and tell me one sentence about where you think it came from. I read every comment on this channel, and I'll reply to as many as I can this week, because that comment, writing it out, is actually the beginning of the third reset. It's the moment the belief goes from inside your head to outside it, where you can look at it. So do it right now before you click away. Next Sunday, I'm going to go deep on the 7 cognitive biases your brain uses every single day, biases that evolved to keep you alive in the wild but are quietly destroying your wealth in the modern world. One of them explains why the more you earn, the more you tend to spend. Another explains why you'll hold a closing investment for years rather than cut your losses and move on. These aren't personality flaws, they are wired in. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. That video goes up this Sunday, and if you're not subscribed, YouTube will not show it to you. That's just how the algorithm works. It only notifies the people who've told it they want this content. So if today gave you one new way of thinking about your relationship with money, hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and every Sunday you get another piece of the psychology that quietly separates the people who build wealth from the people who keep wondering why they can't. I'll see you Sunday.